Hello and welcome to this tornado short summary. This outbreak we're going to be looking at is the June 7th through 9th of 1953. With our little surface map down here at the bottom right, we can see that this low pressure, which is now by around June 9th in Canada, had actually started all the way down in New Mexico, had traveled to Nebraska by June 6th. At this point, we would see 55 knots, which is close to 60 miles per hour of shear aloft. Shear aloft just meaning there's change in wind speed higher up in the atmosphere, as well as a jet streak, which is part of the jet stream, just a small band of faster moving winds in the jet stream that formed in the evening. This would be around 60 to 70 knots and would only continue to increase by the time this low pressure got into Canada. By around June 6th and 7th, we are seeing temperatures around 70 to in the 70s to 80s degrees Fahrenheit, and therefore we would also see dew temperatures be in the 60s to 70s Fahrenheit as well. We would have a total of 50 tornadoes from this outbreak, 6 of them being violent. With this event spanning 3 whole days, this event would cause just short of 250 fatalities, cause more than 2,500 injuries, and inflict 340.6 million in 1953 US dollars in damage. Adjusted for inflation, that's around 3 billion, I think, something like that. So we are going to jump right in, looking at our first notable, which happened from south of Arcadia to west northwest Ord, Nebraska, and was an F4. This F4 would cause 11 deaths and 500,000 US dollars in damage, while it would path 24 kilometers. This is an example of a violent tornado that does not have much information on it, with all that we know from Dr. Grzoulis simply stating that quite a few homes were leveled and that the worst damage was just outside of Arcadia. Our second notable is an example of a significant tornado that did a fair bit. The northwest of Winterset to east of Wallord, Iowa. This F2 would cause no reported casualties, but caused $200,000 in damage according to the CDNS, which for the life of me, I cannot figure out what it means. Controlled damage number center spelled with an S. There you go. This tornado would path 187 kilometers and average at around 91 meters wide. This tornado was, first of all, most likely a family with a path that long, as in fact, even on multiple sites that I came across, it is said that this tornado tracked intermittently, which, if a tornado lifts, for the most part, by almost any means, unless there's still like some suction vortices still on the ground, like if it lifts completely and then touches back down, by all accounts, by definition, that is a new tornado that formed, not just the same one. So, you know, unless you can prove that there were still vortices on the ground, then I would not say that this was the same tornado. Note that the funnel was apparently seen an hour before the known touchdown, you can say, of the tornado. However, you can still have no condensation funnel and it still actually be a tornado. But I digress. This tornado would continue moving forward and struck southern Des Moines, hitting the Des Moines International Airport, actually doing a relative fair bit of damage there. This tornado would also damage several barns and, of course, be destroying crops. Thankfully, this tornado passed by and did not hit many cities. However, again, it did strike southern Des Moines, so take that with a grain of salt right there. But trust me, over almost 200 kilometers, it only hit very few towns, which is a good thing. This tornado would, however, dissipate north of Ely, or Ely, Iowa. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong both times there. Our third notable is one that we have a very nice picture on. This is the Temperance to east-southeast of Vienna, Michigan, F4. This picture is seen as the tornado is nearing Erie, Michigan. This F4 would cause 4 deaths, 18 injuries, and around $250,000 in damage. With quite the short journey, measuring less than 9 kilometers long and averaging at a width of 180 meters wide, this tornado would still do a bit of damage, as this was rated to be violent. There would be 29 homes damaged or destroyed in some way, shape, or form, and this tornado would be absolutely hurling vehicles into the air. This is unfortunately another example of a violent tornado that does not have much information on it. Our fourth notable here went from northeast of Dasher all the way to West Cleveland, Ohio. This F4 would cause 17 deaths and just short of 380 injuries. This tornado tracked an impressive 190 kilometers and averaged at around 91 meters wide. Just like our previous notable two that tracked 187 kilometers, with a track of 190, this was most likely a tornado family. As even in the description that I found, specifically on Wikipedia, yes, I know, it is stated that, a second F3 and then a third F3, if I'm not mistaken. So, what you do know is that this tornado would, again, track from, the first one at least, is known to track from northeast of Dasher, possibly to North Signet, and possibly at a strength of F5. However, this cannot be verified. We do know is that this tornado would go on to destroy a concrete steel bridge. If it is one tornado, then this tornado would continue at F3 strength, tracking east to Kimball all the way to Vermilion, and would obviously, of course, hitting towns, be destroying homes. Continuing onwards, this tornado, again, if it is one tornado, kept on continuing all the way to West Cleveland, continuing at F3 strength, and destroyed more than 100 homes in total. If this is not a continuous tornado, then these gaps here are noted being right there. Our fifth notable is arguably the star of the show here, the north of Flushing all the way to north of Columbiaville, Michigan F5. This F5 caused 116 fatalities, almost 850 injuries, and $19 million in damage. With a track 30.4 kilometers wide, this tornado reached an estimated almost 800 meters wide at its widest points. This tornado got a very fast weather report to the Weather Bureau. However, there was no advanced warning ahead of time for this tornado. And by the time the warning was issued, it was far too late. Note that in Beecher on Coldwater Road, nearly every single home was completely demolished, with some of them being completely swept. And still in Beecher, its high school would be heavily damaged, and it was around this time, around the area, that ground scouring was reported. Still in Beecher, many at a drive-in theater here panicked as it was getting around the nighttime hours. And watching movies at night in a drive-in movie theater makes sense, right? Many saw this funnel seemingly coming towards them and reasonably panicked, to be honest. However, in many panicking and trying to get out of there, many car accidents were caused, and I think around two or three cars even drove into the path of the tornado, and it is not known what happened to them, or at least it is not stated. Papers from this tornado in Michigan reportedly carried 65 miles all the way into Canada, actually. Thankfully, this would actually be the last tornado ever until 2011's Joplin EF5 to cause a death toll in the triple digits. We would come very close, but again, until 2011, there would not be another tornado to cause more than or equal to 100 deaths. This cell would recycle very quickly and produce an F4 that struck Grand Rapids only minutes later. Not striking Grand Rapids minutes later, but producing the F4 minutes later is what I mean. Our last notable here is one that we thankfully actually have damage photos for. The east of Petersham to northeast of Fayetteville, Maryland. Maryland F4. This tornado caused 94 deaths, more than 2,200 injuries, and 52 million US dollars in damage. This tornado trekked an impressive 56.2 kilometers, reaching around half a mile wide at its widest point. In total, over the 56 kilometers, this tornado would damage in some way, shape, or form 4,000 buildings and destroy a fair number as well. As this tornado was nearing Worcester, this tornado grew to be a mile wide, so 1.6 kilometers wide. In Worcester, entire rows of homes were completely destroyed, as is seen in the top left damage photo there. And a 12,000 kilogram bus, roughly 55 or 5,800 pounds, was rolled several times. This tornado had an impressive ground time of an hour, ending at only 5:45. It was only around this point, at around 5:30ish, that a tornado warning was issued for this tornado. As you can imagine, this tornado had pretty much run its life by then, and so unfortunately the warning was far too late. Debris would actually be found from this tornado all the way in the Atlantic Ocean. Granted, not super impressive considering Maryland is fairly close to the Atlantic Ocean. Didn't know if you knew that. It's certainly not inland. And this tornado is even possibly F5. However, multiple sources note that there's slight issues with anchoring of homes that prevented an F5 rating. By far, the best part about this event is something that was reportedly said by a congressman, actually. Nothing about this event is great. You don't want tornadic events. You don't want deaths from tornadoes, of course. But again, it was reportedly thought by a congressman that an atom bomb test conducted in the upper atmosphere I think it was a week or two before this, actually caused this event, which it's 1953. There's not much known about tornadoes. You can give them a break there. It was thought that tornadoes were actually caused by static charges and static pulses. So, obviously not true. But again, we're more than we're what 70 years ahead of them. So, give them a little bit of a break. Very thankfully, though, there's no sorts to, first of all, back this first point up. I do want to mention, as I could not for the life of me find a source that backs it up. I would kind of love to because that would be kind of funny. But what I do know is that if this was proposed, number one, a few other members of Congress backed this man up. Not very many, but like, two to four purportedly. However, meteorologists very quickly shut this down, and so this didn't go any further, thankfully. Note that the Flint F5 is actually one of 7 F5s that happened in 1953 alone, and is one of only 2 Michigander F5s, the other one happening in 1957. You didn't see that last bullet point. Note that the Worcester tornado is actually still to this day the 4th worst tornado, specifically for the number of injuries caused by any tornado in the United States, that's a 70-year-old record by this point. Also note that reportedly, although not able to be confirmed, the Worcester F4 is responsible for the reorganization of the Severe Local Storms Warning Units (SLES) on June of 1953. And that, folks, is all that I have for this outbreak. I hope that you learned something and you liked this video, of course, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching.